Hi, and in this Warhammer Age of Sigmar video, I'm going to be discussing what's happened with the new rules for Morathi. Now, in the Shadow and Pain set, as well as, of course, the new Morathi book, there's a whole host of new rules for the Daughters of Khaine, which I've been looking forward to a great deal. It's one of my favourite armies, an army I sort of now have in a playable version as well. And I did, first of all, when I was sort of getting ready for this and I was reading through the rules, the thing that was coming most to mind is, are these updated rules or are they new rules for effectively what is a different character? Because in the lore, what Morathi as she was, or still is, in the Daughters of Khaine battle tome is Morathi Oracle of Khaine. She was pretending to her followers that she was like the high priestess of Khaine. Whereas now she's ascended to godhood, it's a different character effectively, although it's still Morathi. So I thought to myself, because there are pros and cons to each, you might look at the new Morathi and go, oh, this is better, oh, it's more points, but she's better. Actually, in some ways, she is not. There are some downsides, some weaknesses to the new Morathi rules. That's not to say that the new Morathi rules are no good. There are strengths as well. So the first job was, can you use these both? And I was looking at the rules and I was thinking, well, first of all, if you look at the titles of the war scrolls, they're subtly different. So there's two models that you have with Morathi. There's her, what used to be Oracle form, and the smaller looks like an elf, and then the larger Shadow Queen form. So Mini Morathi and Maxi Morathi. And Mini Morathi would start the battle, and then you could either just transform her at will at the beginning of one of your hero phases, or you may be forced to turn her on the roll of a die if you'd taken any wounds. Now, I thought, well, okay, can you be one or the other? It's in two different periods of time. And in the Daughters of Khaine battle tome, the mini version is called Morathi Oracle of Khaine. And then the maxi version is just called the Shadow Queen. In the new Morathi book, it's Morathi Khaine for the small version and Morathi, the Shadow Queen for the larger one. I thought, maybe they're distinguishing here. Maybe you could choose to use either. Now, I wasn't entirely sure, but then I did also think about it. Well, hang on a minute. I'm looking at the rules of this, and although it might make sense you could use either, I'm also looking at it and thinking, but you know what someone will try and do here, and it'd be totally bogus, but you know what someone will try and do if there isn't a rule that says you can't take both Morathi Oracle of Khaine and Morathi Khaine in the same list. We're going to have issues, and there was no rule prohibiting it. So I went to the Arbiter. As far as I'm concerned, the Arbiter, I went on the Games Workshop website to the Warhammer community and to the list building tool, and it has replaced Morathi with Morathi Khaine in there. The old version of Morathi is not selectable, so as far as I'm concerned, that's it. So now it's just a case of just saying, well, okay, so what are the pros and cons now? Not in a way of, okay, in this list you might want to take the old Morathi, and in this list you might want to take the new one, but just in terms of the old Morathi had these advantages, bear in mind the new one doesn't, so you might need to think about that when you're deciding not only whether or not to take her, but whether you take her at all. So, wrote down a few things. Now, in terms of the advantages of the new one, so first of all, you have both of them on the table at the same time. It's not a case you start off with the mini one, and then at the start of one of your hero phases, you choose or are forced to turn her into the maxi one. They both start at the same time. Now, advantage of this is your opponent is going to have to take 12 wounds off her because the mini version has 6 wounds. And what would always happen in the past is you might, for spell casting purposes, want to keep the mini one in place for a little while until you had a clear in for using the more destructive version in close combat, for example. But if anyone caused her any wounds, you'd have to double those up on the maxi. So if, for example, Mini Morathi had taken 3 wounds, when you turned her into a maxi one who has 12 wounds, she wouldn't have lost 3 wounds, she'd have lost 6 wounds. You'd only have 6 left. With this version, because all of the damage, doesn't matter who you attack, the damage is taken on the Shadow Queen, and she has 12 wounds, and also the rule remains that she can only take a maximum of 3 wounds in any one turn. She still can't be healed, but that means you have got at least 1.5 battle rounds of use of her before she can be killed. She can't be killed any earlier than the second turn of the second battle round. That is the earliest. So you have that in the bank. That is a big plus. It means that it's not a case of now risking it and thinking, oh, do I turn her this turn or not, trying to foresee to the next one, particularly in the event of maybe you taking the first turn and worried about your opponent getting the double turn, so it might be several turns before you get to make that choice again. That's removed. You don't have to worry about that. From that point of view, you're getting the benefits of having both versions on there. The second one, of course, is the fact that you can have your superior spellcaster, the mini Morathi, who can cast 3 spells each phase and unbind 2, and the maxi one who can run around wreaking close combat havoc, some ranged attacks as well, sure, but close combat is where she's going to do most of her damage, you would expect. You get the benefit of both of those. And then the third one, which is an actual improvement over the first one, she's now immune to instant death abilities. So in the original version, although she could only take a maximum of 3 wounds per turn, if someone used an instant death ability, which are always unlikely even when they happen, but you know, it was a very real risk, that no longer works on her. It specifically now says in the rules, if anyone uses such an ability on Morathi, she will just take 3 wounds instead. And if she's already taken some wounds that turn, that will be reduced as well. So she still can only take 3 wounds per turn, and that's all there is to it. So you are absolutely guaranteed a certain amount of time that she will be alive. So those are the advantages. There are some disadvantages, and there are quite a few. The first of all is you can't really employ the Calibrain trick. So one of the temples you can choose to specialise your Daughters of Khaine force means, a couple of things really. I mean, first of all, it's -1 to be hit in shooting, which actually for mini Morathi will probably mean -3 in shooting, because she already gets a -1 to be hit, full stop. And if you keep her close by to a suitable unit, she'd be another -1 to hit, look out sir rule. So it really wouldn't be worth even trying to shoot the little Morathi at that point. But the main Celebron trick was your general has a command ability which allows them at the start of the hero phase to select a friendly unit within 3 inches of them, as long as they're not within, I think, something like 7 inches of enemy units, and teleport them anywhere on the battlefield. Usual rules apply. You can't teleport them within 9 inches of enemy units. Now, I'm going to show you how that would work with Morathi, because it was a cunning little party trick. So, Morathi is next to the general. Morathi is also going to be able to teleport at the start of the hero phase, and she can turn into a shadow form at the start of the hero phase. Now, the way this works is that Morathi's in Oracle form base is 40 millimeters. And her Shadow Queen form has a base of, what's that, just under 100 millimeters, 96, 97-ish. So what you can do with Morathi in position here, the start of your hero phase, you identify that the 2 Terrorgeist over there are going to be a bit of a problem, and you want to knock them out straight away. You can get Morathi in her Shadow Queen form into combat with them. They will take 2 full battle rounds at least to take her down, and in reality she may last a bit longer as well, because she can do some damage herself. So the first thing you do is to teleport Morathi using the command trait. Now Morathi, of course, has to be at least 9 inches away from any enemy when she teleports in. So if I place her there, we are just over 9 inches away. Now, of course, when she turns into any form, the way this works is there's an awful lot of models in various armies that could teleport and attempt an initial strike. The problem is that you're 9 inches away. Even with a command reroll, you're not very likely to get the charge off. You may just about. 9 inches with a reroll gives you slightly better than even's chance of getting in, but it's very, very risky. Much better if you can be closer in. So now what happens is you're going to turn Morathi, it's still the start of the hero phase, you're going to turn Morathi into her shadow form. Now these two events, the teleporting and the turning into the shadow form, are of course simultaneously, given that it's the Daughters of Khaine player's turn, they're going to decide in which order they take place. So the teleportation happens first. The rules state that when you replace Oracle form with Shadow Queen form, that you make sure the centers of the base exactly match if that's possible. That is absolutely possible, so we plonk her down there. Now what this should mean is that we are now a couple of inches closer. So I should now only need a roughly 7-inch charge move to get in, which is indeed the case. Now, a 7-inch charge move has a slightly better than even's chance of succeeding, and if you are prepared to use a command point to re-roll it should it fail, you stack the odds more heavily in your favour. It can still fail, there is still a significant chance that it could fail, but you now have a decent chance, you can expect most times, to get this tactic off. And you know, if she gets the charge in, then of course she can then get herself into combat with both of them. They are then stuck unless they want to run away. At the very least, for a short time, they are not a threat to my army. And of course, if anything is going to take on these Terragrice, Morathi in her shadow form is the very person stroke god thing to do so. So that one's now gone. Another downside is the Shadow Queen is now a little bit less potent. So there's a couple of attacks been changed. Her ranged attack, the Gaze of Morathi, has been changed. Now, it's a little bit debatable on this one because there were some situations under which you could argue the old one would be better. On balance, I would say the new one is in most situations likely to be better. However, in close combat, her main attacks, which come from her spear, the Heartrender, have been weakened because she gets fewer attacks with them. In all other respects, it's the same, but there's fewer attacks with that, and that's her big damaging one. So the Shadow Queen form is not as potent as she was. So that is a big downside. She now costs 600 points, takes up 2 leader slots and a Behemoth slot. Now, although the Shadow Queen clearly is a Behemoth, in the original version, in the Daughters of Khaine battle tome, because what you're selecting is the Oracle of Khaine, she's just a leader, she's not a Behemoth, and she costs 480 points. With the new rules, you have to take both, but they are both treated, and it's very clear about this, they're both treated as separate units. Each unit is a combined points total of 600 points, and each unit is a leader, and the Shadow Queen additionally is a Behemoth. Now the Behemoth is not a big issue. I cannot imagine any list where you would take this new Morathi, or indeed the old Morathi, and want to take another 4 Behemoths in a 2,000 point army, or you know, few in a smaller army. I can't see that being an issue. The leaders thing could be an issue. I can well imagine someone coming up with a list where that would be, but I don't think it's a big problem either. Because again, now at 600 points, that's significantly more expensive. You'd have to think very carefully. I can see you making a list, even a 2,000 point list with Morathi in it, the new Morathi, and only really wanting to take 2 more heroes. So I don't see that as a big issue either. The big issue is the 600 points. Daughters of Khaine, you know, it's not that they're overpriced, but they can be quite expensive when you start adding in the units. And that extra 120 points is going to be significant. It's certainly going to mean complete rewrites of the lists as they were. That is going to be an issue. And there's going to be times when you look at it and you think, well, for how I would have used Morathi originally, I may not get the extra use out of these new rules. Maybe I don't take Morathi whereas I would have done in the past. And then the final thing she loses is her double range on spells. Now, the original Morathi used to double range on spells, and her, now the particular spell she's now been given in the new rules is identical to the one, her personal unique one in the old rules, except it has been given double the range to compensate for that. However, when she's using not her other spells that aren't specific to her, they will be done now at the same range. So she won't be able to blast all of her spells across the battlefield. She'll have to get a bit closer for some of them as well. So that's another weakness as well. So on balance, I mean, this isn't me saying I think the new rules are weaker, and the fact that it's more points means it's actually not as worth it. But also it's not me saying that it is definitely worth it, because there are some serious downsides there. And it's not a criticism either. It's just what it is. If you've used Morathi in a particular way before, it's not like, oh, you get all the benefits of that as well as the new things that you get both on the table at once, because that's how it would initially look. There is going to be an actual choice now. And I'll be sort of discussing as well in the next video, which will probably be in about a week's time, because there's a few other ones on other things I want to do in between then as well, when I talk about the possibility, which also came in both the Morathi book and the Shadow and Pain book, for a Melusai army, you know, which are like the snake people of the Daughters of Khaine, which are very much more in the image of Morathi. So there we are. Those are my thoughts. Hope you found them interesting. If you did, then don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for further content. And until next time, I'll see you later.